Hola, buenos días, ¿cómo están? Un buen día para estar en casa, ¿no? Con este frío que hace, el frío que debe hacer en la facultad, no quiero ni pensarlo. Y bueno, hoy tenemos la charla, la conferencia de Stephanie Bender desde Lausanne, en Suiza. Y bueno, le voy a dar la palabra a Bruno Emmer, profesor adjunto de PUPA, que la va a presentar. ¿Cómo estás, Bruno?
Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenos días a todos, ¿cómo les va? Bueno, hola Steph, ¿cómo te va?
Merci.
Tengo el placer de presentar a Steph, amiga de hace muchos años, de cuando vivía en Suiza. Stephanie Bender, bueno, muchas gracias por estar acá. Stephanie Bender, voy a hacer una breve presentación, hace su estudio de arquitectura en Kassel, en CAT.DIEGUEZ. Luego tiene el doctorado en la EPFL, en la Escuela Politécnica Federal de Lausanne. Ahí obtiene su diploma y tiene un doctorado en ciencias del urbanismo, ¿no? Luego, a nivel profesional, cuando termina sus estudios, se va a trabajar a Rotterdam con OMA, con Renkuljas, donde hace sus primeras armas. Luego va a Lausanne, al estudio RDR, donde ahí nos conocemos. Y en ese momento, en 1998, funda lo que es hoy 2B Arquitectos, 2B Architectes, que es Estrategias Urbanas Concretas, que es una oficina que codirige junto a Philippe Bebou. 2B Arquitectos es una oficina radicada en Suiza, en Lausanne, trabaja en todas las escalas, desde el urbanismo hasta el diseño de interiores, a veces con mucha precisión, y los mandatos que tienen son públicos y privados. Su trabajo está ampliamente publicado y han recibido numerosos premios. A nivel académico, ella es desde hace varios años profesora invitada en el máster de la EIA, que es la Haute École de Ingenieurs Architectes de Friburgo, donde va a ser profesora desde el año que viene titular. También fue profesora invitada en la Universidad de Stuttgart y en la EPFL. Es miembro activa de numerosas fundaciones y órganos relacionadas con el quehacer disciplinar también. Bueno, bienvenida Steph, nos va a dar una conferencia de 1 hora y cuarto, 1 hora y media, así que un placer tenerte acá, y on y va, on dira en français. Merci.
Thank you very much, Bruno, for this presentation, and thank you also, Tristan, for the introduction. I will just judge my presentation. So, do you see it all? It's okay?
It's okay.
Yes,
okay, thank you. So I'm very happy to be here today and to open like a window from Switzerland, from Lausanne to Argentina, to Buenos Aires, and to present our work of the 2B Architects Office in Lausanne, which I do with my partner, Philippe Bebou, and 10, 12 collaborators. I think that's very important also to say, because we're a team and that's important for us. The title is Context, because context in plural is very important for us. It's the physical context. This we see here where we work. It's a plan of photo of Europe, and in the night, and you see by lights the population. And I don't know if you can see my cursor here. Do you see it? We are here.
Yeah.
yes, it's like a croissant in French, in the middle of Europe, in Switzerland, which is not Europe, but you know, it's in the middle of Switzerland, and it's at the Lake of Geneva. And this Lake of Geneva, here's a zoom. It's very important for us as a context because it's very a landscape. In the same time, there's a lot of densification going on because around you see all these lights around, and it's a city now about 2.5 million people. As we will see, the whole influence the space around, which goes also to France. And in the town also in east to all the parts of the valleys, which is a very mountain area in Switzerland. So this lake of Lake Léman, or Lake of Geneva in English, is the landscape. It's very important, and this is a context which is very, very important for us. And this lake, which is very significant in this situation. Hodler, which is a painter, was already painting this in 1907, the impressive landscape, but in the same time today, as you see it on the card here, we have also a lot of by densification, a lot of people coming, a population which is coming, but also headquarters are coming here, and we have this densification around. And the question is now, and this is with Philippe Bibot, we are reflecting in parallel to our projects on it, how can we densify this? In a way, it's a metropole. Now it's getting to a metropole, not as Buenos Aires, but in another identity. And how can we densify it at the same time, keeping the landscape alive? Because this is the reason why the people came here. And this is the reason also why there is a very strong identity. And you see it, this parallel in between a lot of construction and densification and the mountain. And this context is our context for our office, for our life. And it's like we're seeing it like a public square, this lake. Because a public square, as Charles Ferdinand Ramus, it's a Swiss philosopher and author, was writing in the 30s already. Yeah, it could be when we just put out all the limits, because in the Lake of Geneva, there is a limit in the middle to France. So it's divided in two. It's the French side and it's we have the Swiss side. But if we have a more open look at it, it could be like a public space around, like the Central Park. It's a diagram we did in the office, like the Central Park, where there is a densification around, but this densification has to be seen as a whole. And this we are working on in articles, for example, in parallel to our work of the office. And it's quite important for us to have this scale of urbanism also in the reflection and in the office. And I will present you 8 samples of this today, 8 samples, 8 projects, which are around this Lake of Geneva and which have very, very different identities, and they have very, very different scales also. And this is another thing in our office, which is very important, DB Strategy in Urban Concrete. We are working in very different scales with our team, with urbanists, architects, and we get really this connection, mixed architecture and urbanism. And we're doing like very, very classical architecture and extension projects, public and private, which are come out a lot of competition here in Switzerland. We have a lot of public competition, so we work on this, and then when we win the competition, so we can also do the project afterwards. But also transformation interior projects, where we work more maybe in a small scale, and in a scale maybe also with the clients which are more private client. We work on public spaces, gardens. This is very important also for the city, that the public space get more and more important, and we have to think of it and to do it like a project in architecture also, but what we think just until the detail. And we have also a range of bridges and structures. We always work with engineers, with landscape architects, with artists also, that is clear, but also as bridges are very important in the landscape. So we work in collaboration with the engineers, and we go really to the urbanistic and landscape project in our office, which is a very big range for a small office, but we really are convinced that today, for responding to the climate, all these questions and the problems, we have to get more and more urbanism to architecture and architecture to urbanism. So
I will interrupt
Yes.
Stephanie, and I will translate this part. Bueno, vamos a hacer como todas las conferencias. Yo hago un pequeño resumen después de cada proyecto de lo que Stephanie contó. Nos decía que la idea de contextos es muy importante en su trabajo, y contextos para ella significa dos cosas. Significa la ubicación en el lago Le Mans, o el lago de Ginebra, que es un lago que está enteramente rodeado por poblaciones, y una población que va creciendo, se van instalando nuevas empresas, y crece llega gente todo el tiempo, y que además tiene como esta presencia del paisaje y la topografía alrededor. Entonces es un contexto que plantea el desafío de cómo densificar, cómo transformar esto en una metrópolis, no como Buenos Aires, pero otro tipo de metrópolis, sin perder, manteniendo el paisaje vivo, sin perder la conexión con el paisaje. Entonces la idea es pensar en el lago como espacio público, que es esta idea del filósofo Ramuz, filósofo, y el trabajo de ellos. Ellos investigaron y escribieron muchos artículos sobre este tema, y nos van a mostrar 8 ejemplos construidos en este contexto de escalas y de carácter muy diferente. Algunos son proyectos ganados por concursos de edificios más o menos grandes, otros son interiores y comisiones privadas, otros son espacios públicos, otros son puentes y estructuras, y otros son proyectos urbanos y de paisaje, que es un rango muy amplio para una oficina tan chica, y ese es como el desafío del trabajo. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you. I will start with the Place du Moulin, a square in Geneva, which is in the city center. It's located here in this area. And it's in between the old city center and the lake. And Place du Moulin, it was in the history a harbor, a small harbor for boats getting in, for the transport of the materials. And then in history, the land was won to the side, to the city, and it was transformed to a square. And this square was very important in the history of Geneva, is still very important, because there were a lot of public events and political events getting on this square in history. So it's a very symbolic square for Geneva. And then time until the 60s, the 70s, there were more and more cars coming on, and the infrastructural elements on the square, and there was like a mix of materials. Even when the car went out, as we started the competition, there were really a mix of materials on the ground. And it was a competition, and when we visited the square in a way it was working. There were terraces on the square, there was activities, there were not a lot of furniture on it, so there could be a lot of activities on this square. So we wanted really to keep this quality in the center of Geneva, because there's not a lot of free square spaces, but we wanted to give another identity which is linked to the continuity of the space, to recognize that this is a whole space and the whole square. So we wanted to put on materiality unique, which is a pavement of basalt. This is the identity material also for the city center, the old city center of Geneva, and the Place de Mollard is part of this city center historically, in history. And so the idea was that we get really a continuity on this square, that we with the pavement, and also the trees. There were four trees on this square, and we just continued them, 3 more trees, for also getting an identity which is a certain continuity on this square. And then there was the history, and for us this is also a context, and we wanted to reveal the history, to get again a memoir of this history on this new square that we did the project on. And the water was an element which was always important in history, and we just thought that the reflection on the water when the sun comes on the water could be an interpretation with this like an image that could fit on this square, and to put in between this stone pavement, light pavements, which get more and more densified in direction of the lake. And so to reveal the history, but in a very light way, in a way. And in this pavement, for the competition, we were with the artist Christian Robert Tissot from Geneva, and he was proposing to put in this light pavements the words of every day, 9 words of every day in the 6 international languages. Geneva is a very international town, headquarters and international institution, and the 6 international languages were then represented with this everyday words. Hello, see you soon, etc., etc. And they were put in this pavement, in this stone pavement, and when the night starts to come down in a way, you start also to see these light pavements. In the day you don't see them. That was also our intention. In the day it was only the surf, a continuous surface, and in the night the pavements get more and more visible, but gives a light which is more atmospheric light. This was also very important. And then the people see this pavement passing by, see maybe their language, because a lot of international tourists are there, also the people for the business, and they see then, and in a way the light pavement are talking to them, and it was like a conversation also on a square. And what was quite interesting is that we didn't fix the exact situation of these light pavements. It was only a percentage of per square meter, and the people which did the pavement, they had to put them really in the exact position. And there are some surprises which are quite interesting for us, and nice to have this also in a process of project, that you control not everything in a process, and this is also very interesting for us. Thank you.
Este proyecto es un proyecto en el centro de la ciudad de Ginebra, en un lugar que se llama Place de Mollard, que queda entre el centro histórico y el lago. Históricamente era un pequeño puerto, era una entrada del lago en la ciudad, y fue muy importante por eventos políticos que tuvieron lugar ahí, y entonces tiene un gran valor simbólico. En los 60 y en los 70 se llenó de autos, distintos materiales de piso, y cuando todo eso se sacó. La plaza ya empezó a funcionar con expansión de los locales que quedaban alrededor, y ellos lo que propusieron en el concurso fue unificar el piso, hacer un piso de adoquines de roca basáltica, que es el material de las calles del centro de la ciudad, y armar esta fila de árboles, agregando a los árboles que ya existían en el lugar. Pero además de hacer el piso y los árboles, propusieron traer un poco de la historia del lugar, que es este pasado de ser parte del lago. Entonces, entre los adoquines hay artefactos de iluminación, y esto genera como un efecto que solo se ve de noche. De día se ve como un piso plano, y de noche se ven estos artefactos de luz que tienen distintas palabras, que es algo que hizo un artista local y que tiene que ver con todos los idiomas de la ciudad de Ginebra, que es una ciudad muy internacional, sede de muchos organismos internacionales. Y estos se dispusieron, como se fueron disponiendo las luces, por la gente que iba colocando el piso durante el proceso de construcción, lo que le agregó como un elemento de azar al resultado final del proyecto. Thank you.
Okay, the second project is a project in Lausanne, Urban Villa 4-in-1 BUMO. It's linked also to the context of the place, the site, which is a historical site, like the countryside of BUMO. There are a lot of countrysides in Lausanne. It was the houses for the weekend, for the people from Lausanne, from the city town. They went out and they had like 10 minutes by walk, a small house which was surrounded by garden. And now these sites are part of the city. They are surrounded by the city, and they are like often very greenery oases in the city now. And this is the historical photo of this site, BUMO, which was a building also. There were not only one family in this building, but 3 families. It was a really already by floor plan community in a way in this building. And when we start the project in 2005, this was still in a very poetic situation, this site. It's in the middle of Lausanne, but it has this enormous garden. It's nearly a park. And the idea was to keep this quality of this garden in one side, the one side, but also to work on a typology research. And the typology research is linked to identification of, in a way, of individual houses. To put 4 individual houses, the quality of 4 individual houses in one volume. And I put this sketch of Leonardo da Vinci on the screen because it's a reference. A friend of us was showing us after we did the project, but I think it's very, very interesting because Leonardo da Vinci did also some researches in parallel to his stairway Chambord. I think you know this. There are 2 stairways in a chateau which is not crossing, and they are in parallel. And he did this at the same time for housing, where the stairways come to the ground, and every house in a way, or every floor, has its own entrance. So our idea was in a way the same, that we have an access from the floor, and that we have also the qualities like garden and all the orientations in every part and in every house which are in this volume. And we were doing this in a way that we really developed 4 very different volumes. You see them here, and if you stick them together, it gets to one complete volume. But every part, every house has his own speciality, has this entrance, has a garden, and has all orientation. And it's quite strange, this image like this, to see it separately, because in a way the whole is getting to one volume. And the volume is dictated really by the reglementation of the city town. It's densification of the public and private reglementation. It's the black one here you see, like a strange form, but it's just the result. And then we had a work really on this volume with a facade which is very mineral, as the context also of the old countryside Beaumont. This was quite important also, in a very dark gray brown concrete. We wanted to integrate it also in the nature as much as we could. And in the same time also to show this is a development of the facade, to show the different treatment of the facade that shows the prints of the typology of the houses in the interior. So every house, every part has his own facade or his own treatment of a facade. There is like sanded parts of the concrete. There are like also different mold of the in wooden molds or metal molds, etc. So 4 treatments which are different, but in the same time they get to a whole volume. If you approach it, you see really the difference of it. And if you're more far away, depending on the light, it gets really to one volume. Here you see it, also the volume, which gets, depending on how you have a look at it, quite, in a quite big volume, and in a way the form is also working more with a small volume when you have a look at from the other side. But here you see also quite good the different treatments in the facade. And then in the inside of the building of this 4 apartment or 4 houses, we have a patio around which all the stairways are wrapping around. And so there is one side, this patio, which is part of the whole. So it's a common place also inside, with this artwork of Christian Robert Tissot, which is suspended there. And that work of the materiality, which is in contrast to the concrete outside, because the concrete for us, it's very important, and it has a very strong character. So we want to dissimulate and get more an non-materiality in the inside, and it's like metal panels which are mirroring also the other side of the patio. And you see then here, everybody has his, well, there's the common entrance with the patio, and everybody has an entrance here, here, and here's the office in which we are working. And we have also all these garages where you can also come in as in an individual house. And then you have this stairways going up with you see our office just behind. And in the ground floor, which is the garden floor in a way, because it's a higher than the street level. You have all in these different brown, gray colors, the living spaces, which are really on the outside. Every space is in a way different, and the stairways wrapping around this patio space, and everybody has this connection to the garden. And then a work, really a spatial work on this interior sequences, which have also sequences which are getting more with a lot of variation as in an individual house. You see it here also, connection in double heights. very profound spaces as this bibliothèque library here. Then the connection always to the patio, and the connection also to the neighbors, but was quite important that we can not directly see them, but in a way feel the neighbors also, that we are not alone in a house. I think was also very important for this development of the project. And then the more individual spaces, the bedrooms, which are always connected to a bathroom. So are like small unities in this house. And this house has a certain urbanity also with this, because the levels can also function in a way independently. And then the space is also in the last floor, which connects also all the rooms together. And well, the end was after the construction. We had this image. We are sure that there's a volume, but the way was also to integrate it more in this garden context, and in a way also to have another image even in the night, because there the windows are getting much more important. Okay.
Este proyecto son 4 casas urbanas en Beaumont, en Lausanne. Era un suburbio de Lausanne, un lugar donde la gente iba al fin de semana a tener una casa más grande, y ahora ya es parte de la ciudad, y es una especie de oasis verde de la ciudad. Cuando empezaron el proyecto en 2005, esto tenía un jardín enorme que se veía en las primeras fotos, y la idea era hacer 4 casas individuales dentro de un único volumen. Entonces, empezaron por el elemento central de circulación. Vieron, existe también es algo que está desarrollado hace tiempo, lo vieron en el dibujo de Leonardo de las 4 escaleras, que es una especie de desarrollo que hizo en paralelo a la escalera doble del castillo de Chambord, en Francia. En este caso son 4, por las que uno puede subir sin cruzarse con la gente que está en las otras escaleras. Entonces, esto les permitía armar 4 unidades, 4 viviendas muy diferentes entre sí, que todas den hacia todas las orientaciones, que todas tengan jardín y que todas tengan su escalera, y que entre todos estos volúmenes diferentes formen la volumetría que permite el código, que es esto que está construido. La fachada tiene este aspecto, lo cuenta como mineral, que se relaciona con el entorno, pero a través de los distintos encofrados, lo que consiguen es que se pueda individualizar, si uno lo mira en detalle y de cerca, cómo es cada una de las viviendas, ¿no? Y qué fachada corresponde a cada casa. De cerca uno lo puede ver y de lejos no se ve. Y en el patio central están las escaleras, y hay en el medio una obra del mismo artista que hizo las inscripciones en el piso de la plaza. What's the name of the artist, Stephanie?
Christian Robert Tissot. It's a Geneva-based artist. He's always working with words.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the next project is a transformation project of a house from 1903 by an architect which was in this time very known in Lausanne, Georges Epiteau, and it's called House Les Closy. It's near the situation where we just were with the Villa Beaumont here, the urban villa here. And it's just some houses above. This is the whole university hospital here with a big complex in Lausanne. And the idea was we could have done with the house. It's this house here. It's a Heimatstil house. It's a certain style here in Europe where they at this time try to work a lot of ornamental elements, but in a very rough way. And they worked a lot of materials from the context, local materials in this time also. And this house was, the question in the beginning was, yeah, well, do we keep it, or we could also make a big densification there. We could had put the double of this surface, but the clients were very attached to this house. They never lived there before, and then we were trying to reflect on it, and I think we thought it's a very, maybe for some it's a very strange style, but for us there's also a lot of quality in this style. And the idea was to keep the house, to just at the outside put some elements, change some small elements, and to change and to transform the interior. But the interior was 2 apartments, sorry. It was here 1 apartment, and on top there was another apartment. So as the family wanted to live there inside this house, well, we just transformed it completely in the inside. And the idea was to put only some stairways to get really directly in the garden, but it was not the case. They couldn't go from inside directly to garden, only with the public staircase here. And to also
Stephanie, sorry to interrupt you, but I don't know if ¿ustedes ven lo que está contando Stephanie? O a mí se me quedó congelada la pantalla en el proyecto anterior.
Yo ahora lo veo. Al principio me parecía esa, pero ahora lo veo.
Ok. Esperemos, voy a salir y volver a entrar. Decirle a Stephanie que avance y por ahí alguien traduce este pedacito. Yo salgo y vuelvo a entrar entonces.
Ok. Steph, tu continues, Tristan va réouvrir son Zoom, mais on continue. On voit bien ta présentation.
Il y a un problème
Okay. Non, il a eu un problème, Tristan. D'abord, quand tu as démarré ce projet, je voyais encore bon nom. Mais après, ça partit et ça marche bien maintenant.
OK.
Continue.
Well, this is the house after the transformation. So we only work on very little small elements, as you see it here, ornamental elements for the door, which is only a work, very small work for the door. For the veranda, because it was an open element, which was not, it was an outside element, and it was in a very damaged situation. So we only worked for an extension inside with this element, and we put on this concrete elements with the glass, so very small detail elements to reinterpret also the historical style in a way, but to put it also in a different way today, to show it that it's different also, and 2 stairs which have a certain form linked to this Heimatstil also, but reinterpreted it in a way very contemporary. And so then the inside of the house, where there was a double height here in history, and we put a triple height inside, that the living space here can also be connected to the 2 upper floors, and we just conserved really the whole staircase, which is the historical staircase, but is a continuous staircase for the interior. So you see it here, this triple height, underneath which is the kitchen and the eating space, the connection to all the floors with this triple height, and the living space, which got all this space supplementary for making also an extension of this space. And in the middle, we have always a structure with the furniture with structuring the space. And I just go through, this veranda was also an idea that we get more projected into the garden. The contrast in between the intervention elements, the new elements, and this historical staircase. And then in the upper floor, there are the rooms. So the idea is really to structure it with this furniture in the middle, the black furniture, and to get then spaces inside which are rhythmed by this furniture. And elements, keeping the existing elements of the house and the second staircase. So very small intervention in the outside and a more structural intervention in the inside.
Este proyecto es la intervención en una casa de 1903, perdón, volví, de un arquitecto famoso de ese momento, que se llamaba Georges Epiteau, que era muy cerca del proyecto anterior, y la intervención se trata de pequeños elementos como que se ven de afuera, como la puerta, las barandas nuevas, una escalera nueva, y el cerramiento de este lugar semicubierto, con un vidrio y con ese antepecho de hormigón, y eso es lo único que se puede ver de afuera. En cambio adentro arman una triple altura sobre el lugar de la cocina y el comedor, y este contraste entre los lugares intervenidos nuevos y la escalera histórica, que es lo que se mantiene de la casa anterior. ¿Me faltó algo, Anita?
Okay. So next project, Center of the Rehabilitation of Silvana, and this is for the University Hospital. It's up to Lausanne. In the landscape, and it's like a clinic, but it's a clinic after you get your operation and you're in the big university clinic. You can stay there like 2 weeks until 2 months. It's like in between. It's in a historical building, sanatorium, which all these typical buildings in Switzerland, like hotels or sanatoriums. They stay like with very big volumes in the landscape, and there's always landscape around in history. And the idea was to keep this quality of this element, but to densify it, because they needed more rooms, a lot of more rooms with the densification also of the whole city of Lausanne. You have this the plan, so you have this existing sanatorium, which was very often transformed in the inside and also in the outside. And our proposition for this project, because we had in the beginning a urban project, how can we densify on this side, and our proposal was to densify on the rooftop of this building. And then we were also working as an architect on it, and the idea then was to have a look at the existing building, the historical building, and there was already like a house on the house, which was the house for the director of the sanatorium, which has a certain form, expressive form also in time. And the idea was then to work on an expressive form with it in the top of the trees, and to develop like a form which has a certain rhythm on its rooftop with 2 floors. And this element was then considered as like in his materiality also like a roof with a copper cladding. And depending how the trees come, it gets out of the trees or it's in the trees. That depends a little bit on the photo you take from this building. Here we have it quite directly overall, but this was also the idea was really to express the new element on this situation. And the process of the project was that the clinic, which is underneath, goes on during the whole construction process. So we had to find a real efficient construction process. And we proposed it as it is also we had to be very light in wood. We worked with a Swiss-German engineer, Pierre Mignon, which is very known for this kind of constructions. And there was these elements, prefabricated elements, which are coming, and we had a very quick construction process on the site. And then there was also the question of the cladding, that we do not have a sous-construction of the cladding, but that the cladding is already the seal. So it's only one element gets on, and we found this seal cladded with copper already, which we put on the facade and on the roof. So it's one element, and only the window frames, they were constructed really on the side, but the other elements are quite very industrial elements. And this is also the dialogue between this copper, which gets more and more brown, and the other roofs in the environment was quite important for us, that there's a dialogue in between. And then there was also research on the typology, because in this situation you have always the rooms, with the beds, and then you have a couloir, you have corridor. And for us, it's quite annoying to see this. And we were discussing a lot with the people which work in this site. And they were saying, well, in our corridor, there's a lot of activity going on. I mean, the whole activity they do is still, it's in the corridor. So the exercises they do with the patients, and all the activities and the exchange with them, eating also, it was like the corridors was getting a space in the discussion. And this was then the idea. You see it in this diagram, that the corridor is getting really a space and has a certain identity. And in plan, it was manipulated with rooms. So how they are orientated, we could have also like a different extensions of this corridor, that the corridor is getting space. And the situation was then that we had this corridor, we had also the advantage of the roof, that's for sure. And the materiality, this was also a research. Normally in this case, they always use very abstract materials, which are very clinic. And this was the first time that we could use, after some researches, oak wooden elements. That goes up also like on the walls, and that there is also like a ceiling overall, that the exercise could really done in this space. And then depending where you are, you have this extension of the space and the possibility always to do an exercise, to exchange also with people. And you see it's a lot of going on in these spaces, a lot of wheelchairs also, a lot of activity when there is the clinic functioning at 100%. And also the rooms are more habitable with this parquet wooden element. So also this was a first time they did in the clinic with the wood elements. Okay.
Este es un centro de rehabilitación donde la gente es el centro de rehabilitación Silvana, donde la gente se queda después de operarse, se pueden quedar 2 semanas a 2 meses, y está construido siguiendo esta tradición de grandes volúmenes en el paisaje, de los hoteles y sanatorios en Suiza. La pregunta es cómo densificar esto, y entonces pensaron que como la casa del director ya era como una construcción separada en el techo, con esa lógica podían agregar 2 pisos más. Ese volumen nuevo que se agrega está revestido en cobre, y según desde donde uno lo vea puede aparecer entre los árboles o parecer que está como sobre los árboles. El desafío constructivo era que había que hacerlo mientras la clínica estuviera en funcionamiento. Entonces todo está hecho con elementos prefabricados que se terminaron de ensamblar en el lugar, y la fachada y el techo son un único elemento industrial de cobre. Lo único que no es parte de este elemento son los marcos de la ventana. Y en el interior ellos descubrieron que el pasillo era el lugar donde pasaba todo en la clínica, todas las actividades y todo lo que fuera común. Entonces trabajaron para transformarlo en un espacio que tuviera su propia identidad a través de la forma, también a través de los materiales. Lograron que los autorizaran a hacerlo de madera, entonces tanto el piso como el primer metro de las paredes son de roble, y esto hace que el lugar tenga una identidad especial. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. La Touffière, it's a building for a theater and community center in a very rural area. It's Corps-Patomagné-Dance. This is very typical also for Switzerland, that you have these villages. You have well, there's always a quite big town just beside, but you have also this landscape oriented situations, and you have a situation also where the villages are a lot of developed in the beginning just beside the road. And this is the case of Corps-Patomagné-Dance. But the case of Corps-Patomagné-Dance is also that there are a lot of old buildings with this tuff stone. It's a very open stone. And there's also carrière, inside where you can get the stone. It's really the stone from the local stone. And as we saw this in the competition phase, we thought this is really important because it's part of their history. And to take this stone, we tried to get this old Touffière, it's a stone, the extraction site, opened it up. This was in this case not possible because there's a house on top, so very difficult in this case. But we got, well, the tuff stone from another region, and the idea was to work on a volume which is getting the same size in a way as the public's other volumes or programs. As you see it here, this is a restaurant existing, or the church also, and to have it in the same orientation as these buildings. It's 90 degrees to the road, sorry. And the other ones, the private houses, historical private houses, they are often parallel to this road. So the idea was to work on with this tuff stone, to put it on this 5 facades, like something which is overall, like putting really an overall on this building, but have a volume which is also being orientated in a very simple way on the old houses around. And the other element was to put a small public space, because these villages, they have no public space, and to have just one surface in front, to have also the possibility to have the exchange for the village people there, which are living there. And you have always this concrete elements, which are the entrance, or which have also all openings are like frames in concrete. And then you have this very open tuff stone that we put in 6 centimeters directly glued to this concrete element of the structure behind. So it's a very simple construction, but it's possible also because the stone is very open and it's not getting too cold to get damaged. And then we had this very simple element that the roof is also made of the same stone. And a plan which mix up like with an entrance, the more public spaces for the village, and this big theater space for the village, but also for the region, which is clad in a whole oak wooden element, which works in a way also with acoustic elements which are just behind. So for regulate a space for theater and for concerts, there is a regulation which works quite well just behind, very simple. And you see it here in the section that the part of the theater is quite is symmetrical, and the other spaces are put then in the rest of the building, and the connection to the existing buildings also. Thank you.
Este es un edificio, se llama La Touffière, en un área rural, en un pueblo rural. Es un edificio comunitario. En el pueblo hay una cantera de esta piedra tuff, y la idea era hacer un volumen del mismo tamaño y orientado de la misma forma que los volúmenes más grandes de este pueblo, o sea, colocado perpendicular a la ruta o a la calle, y después revestido en esta piedra, en la piedra de la cantera del mismo lugar, como si fuera un overall. Por delante arman un pequeño espacio público, porque estos pueblos no tienen espacio público, y la entrada es como un marco de hormigón que se ve desde el espacio público. Las paredes son de hormigón y tienen la piedra de 6 centímetros pegada directamente sobre el hormigón. Es un método simple que se puede hacer porque como la piedra es una piedra bastante abierta, no se deteriora tanto por el frío, y los interiores están revestidos en roble, y entonces cumple con las propiedades acústicas del teatro.
Okay, a public school and community center in Belmont, which is a small city near Lausanne. This is a situation as we had in the beginning of Hodler, when you really see the sea like a panorama in front of you from this small town. And the idea was to work also with this panorama for the school, that the school profits also with the panorama. And we have an existing situation, it's very complex. There are elements which are quite interesting inside, but outside you have all these different levels in this existing school. And you can come from all over, but it's not very clear how you can arrive. You can go inside, and also the connection in between the activities are difficult. So the idea was with our project was to connect all these different levels, and also the inside of the building, that you have in a way an inside connector, like an infrastructure which goes through the building and which connects all the levels and the buildings. And this was also an intention that we wanted, and this is very typical in Switzerland also, to mix up. We had a program, but we said, well, we can also put one or two elements supplementary in this building, because in Switzerland you can have also public elements in a school, like apartments. You can also put a public space in front that is used outside the school, but because the school are not closed, they are open, and all the village all the town can profit from this elements, also like gymnastic rooms, etc., etc. So the idea was really that this gets also not only a public school, but a public building. This was for us very, very important. And as the process was not so defined in the beginning of the competition and the program also, we said, well, we have to get a structure, a system of a structure in it, grid, like this image of Skuyten and Peters, La Fièvre Urbigante, which is a bande dessinée, a comic. And like this structure, which can also react in the process, we can get bigger or a little bit smaller, or and it's not a defined form exactly from the beginning. And this was what we was working with. The project changed in the process. It's often this case, but in this it was changed a lot. And we have this building here, which is our connector. And we have this connector. We have in one part, we have 2 floors with this public small space for children. And in the other part, we have this 2+1 level with the apartments here, which have an entrance directly to from the outside. And this grid was also a question of expression of architecture. We developed a system which is a structure system, outside structure system. You see it here in concrete, which is quite massive, but this was also our idea. And this massive structure have then different elements of glass and metal inside for the openings. There's a double system which is designed here. There's the opening and the windows which closes, and then you have this protection element outside with all the textiles here through the whole height. So there's different elements, but the structure of the concrete is always staying. And then the form is reacting depending on the context with this grid. And here you have all the heights, the levels, the 5 levels, with the section of the gymnastic room. And the connector inside with the staircase, for us it was very important as it's public, that it's not only a small element, it was really the work of a spatial connection which gets much public also inside the building. And I go through the building just with the question also with the materiality. It was important that we had always, here we have the oak again in the gymnastic room, that we have also the possibility to use only the colors of the materiality in a way. Spaces also for rooms for the outside the school, before and after the school, the children are staying in school, they can stay in school here in Switzerland. And then this stairway is going up, coming to this level where we have a covered outside space with this structure of the concrete. We have this outside space, which is like a space for the children or for all kind of activities they have during the school or also after the school or on the weekend. And there's a room which is more where the children they eat, but also a room that you can hire and do a party there. So it's also very flexible. And then the level for the classrooms where they have again a corridor, which is not a corridor, but it's just a space. It's quite important for us. And the classrooms with a lot of view also outside in this panorama of the lake of Léman.
Este es el proyecto de una escuela pública y un centro comunitario en Belmont, también en las afueras de Lausanne, y la idea importante, una de las ideas importantes es la de panorama, ¿no? La vista que hay desde el lugar de la escuela. Y hay hay varios edificios existentes en distintos niveles que hacen que sea difícil encontrar los accesos a veces y que presenta dificultades de conexión entre las partes. Y lo que pasa con estos proyectos de escuelas en Suiza, nos contaba Stephanie, es que además pueden agregar otros elementos, otros programas públicos al programa de la escuela. Y como no estaba enteramente definido cuando empezaron a trabajar, pensaron más que en un proyecto cerrado, en armar un sistema y en esta idea de la grilla, y armar una grilla que permitiera a lo largo del proceso de diseño ir adaptándose a la configuración que vaya teniendo el proyecto, que es lo que pasó. Es un proyecto que cambió mucho en el proceso, pero finalmente esta idea de la grilla de hormigón que aloja una doble piel, ¿no? Una interior y una exterior, con las cortinas y los elementos de protección en el medio, es lo que sirvió para poder juntar todos estos espacios tan distintos, ¿no? Como los espacios semicubiertos, de comer, que también el comedor, que funciona, se puede usar como Zoom, y los lugares de aulas y los lugares de circulación, que son importantes y anchos. Thank you.
Thank you. And then again a public space in Interface La Sala, which is it's in Lausanne, but in the north of Lausanne. And it's not a square, it's a public space. Because in the history, it was a road, you see it here, a very large, very traffic-orientated road. And as the traffic was, there was a deviation of the traffic. So this space got free from traffic, only with public buses on it. And the question is, how can this space be developed, and how can it how can we give them an identity? And our idea was to not to treat it like a square, but to treat it like a surface which connects really the different polarities which are existing. And well, there's a lot of shops, but it's also the new metro which came to the M2 to Lausanne, and it's underneath. But we wanted also to have like a material going through until this entrance of the metro to connect all these polarities. And there was, well, this connection was important to work on it, but there was also to have symbolic more this the metro going every 2 minutes underneath it, and to have like a symbol of this speed which is going through it, but we don't see it, and to work with like elements of sequence, which is also showing the sequence of the metro. And then we get this scheme together for the form, and this sequence of materiality, and like a dégradé from the asphalt, which gets less and less in the center, and it gets more and more the concrete element in the center, which is also the space which is more connected for all the public people. So the idea was to make this dégradé with the materiality on the floor, on the whole space, and in the other hand to put on, because there are also stops for the bus, and they are turning on this surface, so it's a mixed space between public buses and velos and people which are walking. And to make through this big space some elements for the buses, overall the surface, and to put also the maximum of trees we could put on the surface. And the problem was that the whole infrastructure of Lausanne is going through this space. So there's very, very small space left that you can plant. And we just try really to find all the space where you can plant, where there are holes in this infrastructure, to put on a very typical tree, which is the linden tree in Lausanne. It's a very typical tree that you planted in history. And this was in the beginning when we were just finished the project. So we have this plantation here. You have this element which are getting denser and denser in concrete, and less dense for the asphalt. And you have this volume which is can be a shop or a cafe. And you have a lot of elements on this square which are distributed, where you can sit down without paying a coffee. And this is very rare in Lausanne. A lot of spaces you pay always. And here was our intention also to have spaces where you can stay and just eat something without paying somebody for drinking something. So there is this mixed space. It's quite interesting. It's functioning, and but a lot of difficulties in the beginning, because I thought it's not possible. But in a way now the people are used to it, and it's possible. Even a lot of velos going through, a lot of people also working, and it's very activated now, the place. And the trees are growing, so there will be also more volumes on it in terms of the trees. And the volumes for the bus stop was also a work with the linden, with the tilleul, that we did. It was it's a cast element that has like a mold from these linden elements that we designed, and it with cast iron. And this cast iron is very resistant in public space. And even also the light can come through, so we can also put some light for illuminating it, but being protected also from the damaging in the public space. And it's a very repetitive element, so it was an element that the mold we could use for all the elements on the square. So even for these elements, for the velo parkings, and also for the interior of the spaces, which is a flower shop here inside, and for the elements also where you can stay and you can just lounge down. And this photo is just starting to the footbridge project we did in the same time. This is a footbridge which is in wood, where you go through. Maybe I make a break and you do the, or shall I go on with the footbridge?
Estás muteado, Tristán.
Okay, yes, go on.
Okay, the footbridge is the connection from this public space to the more forest space beside. And the geometry is linked always to what's going on underneath it. So it's getting quite strange form, but the idea is really that you feel also the elements which are underneath, and that goes to this forest space where you have a lot of view again to the Lake of Léman or Geneva, and which is quite very natural space. So the idea was to put this footbridge on the one side, really on a tumulus, which is, you see it, Robert Smithson, a spiral hile inspired by this artwork. And the tumulus is an element that we got the earth from the tunnel of the metro. So it's an element, it's a recycling element in a way, and we could then put it there and make a ramp one hand and also the stairways in the other hand. So and then we have this concrete element outside, which is the structure of this footbridge, reacting on the geometry of what is underneath. And also then with the covering of the wood inside, which is the wood of the local wood from the city that we put inside, that we cut, we put on a process that they cut it in the forest, and it was a whole process to go on, but it works out then. So it's very local project also with the wood, and the wood is reacting also with the view. It goes up where it's necessary also for the metro, because there are some security conditions, and otherwise it goes down for giving also the view free, or to only see the forest. So it's reacting on this natural elements and infrastructure elements around. And then we have also this work, very simple work with the light, which is just behind, and you have this voids of the wood in between, that the light just come through, and it's even protected also because as it is a public space, we have also be very aware that it's very resistant. Thank you.
Okay, I will traduzco los dos. El primero es el espacio público y un lugar de interfaz en las salas. Es un lugar donde no hay tránsito, solamente pasan buses y por debajo pasan los metros, pasa el metro. Entonces el trabajo con el solado busca representar como esta idea de velocidad del metro que pasa cada 2 minutos, como con estos gradientes y este juego de bandas, que forman como gradientes que van desde el asfalto en los bordes al hormigón en el centro, o del tránsito de autos al lugar público de la gente, ¿no? Que lo representa el hormigón. Y dentro de este espacio público solamente están las paradas de los buses, y ellos buscaron plantar el máximo de árboles que pudieran en el resto del lugar, que es difícil porque toda la infraestructura de la ciudad de Lausanne pasa por debajo, entonces tuvieron que ir encontrando los huecos donde podían plantarse árboles. Los árboles son tilos, que es un árbol muy característico de la ciudad, y el resultado de esto es que con el equipamiento urbano que incorporan, es un lugar donde uno puede sentarse a tomar un café y quedarse en un lugar que es totalmente gratis, sin pagar nada, que es algo raro dentro de la ciudad. Y a partir de las hojas de tilo hicieron este patrón que después construyeron en placas de hierro, y que usaron, que le da la identidad a este espacio público, y que usaron para todo, desde los hilorrazos de los interiores, hacer el equipamiento, revestir las paradas de buses, etc. Y desde este espacio uno ve desde este lugar público, uno ve este puente peatonal, que te lleva al bosque que queda enfrente, y la idea es que uno pudiera ver lo que hay abajo, y que con la tierra que se sacó de la construcción del metro, se hizo esta especie de pequeña montaña a donde llega el puente, y por donde uno baja hasta el bosque. El exterior es de hormigón, es como una estructura de hormigón revestida en madera adentro, y la altura de la madera va cambiando, adaptándose a las vistas, ¿no? Oculta la vista del metro y te permite ver más el bosque. Las luces están puestas de manera que aparezcan entre las maderas, ahí en los encuentros, y, y te iluminan el piso de noche. Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay, I forgot this image. It's an image from an artist in Lausanne, Mathieu Gafsou. He did the image of this tumulus of the La Sala in the night, and it's quite interesting. He was exposing it that you do not see the bridge, and we quite like it because it's completely different. But it's yeah, well, it's so quite nice to have it there. Okay, let's go. This is the last one, Renovation House Gaubena, which isn't in no context of the Lake of Geneva. It's in the south of France. But I wanted to show it because it's in a context also of our teaching we are doing. With the teaching of the work of the students, they are working now. They have the presentation next week. And we did there, south of France, a transformation project in a site which is created by André Lefebvre et Jean Aubert in Bormes-les-Mimosas, Var. It's a site at the Mediterranean Sea, in between, I don't know if you know Toulon and Saint-Tropez, I don't know if it, but it's a quite natural site. You see it here on this card. It's this cap we are working on, and it's called Un domaine du Gaubena. And this domain is a domain which was created from these architects in the end of the 50s, where they had a lot of very interesting thinking of how a site can preserve the landscape, this context, even if you construct a lot of houses there. And this is the plan, their urban plan, that they were urbanists and architects, and they did a plan. Today there are 750 houses. They have different urbanities. You see it like there are the villages, the hameaux, and then you have also more individual situations. But in between you have a lot of green, a lot of protected green. And it goes until the Mediterranean Sea. And in this element, and also for the houses, it's not seen here on the plan, but you have very, very densification of the nature also. And if you see it from the seaside, you don't see the houses, but they are covered completely inside this domain, underneath the pinade, underneath these different trees. And this is quite interesting about that when you construct 750 houses there, that they are nearly they're nearly invisible. And we have also, they made this on their plan, they have a very high permeability of what they call gao piéton, of the small connections for only for the people who walk over all the domain, so you can go there overall. And they put on a reglementation with some words. For example, the stone is a material, you can only use stone for the walls, and for the horizontal elements it's concrete, and they are the horizontal elements, they are the roofs are always green. And if you have a tree, for example, in there they have seven sketches. If you have a tree, you can't cut the tree, you have to construct around with a patio. So this is only one very intelligent reglementation, and this reglementation is still alive. So it's still the case today. It's a little bit difficult sometimes, but it's still there, the reglementation. And you see it also, the precept of the question of the stone, that is, there's one materiality, but there's a great range of typologies and spaces. So it's very interesting to see, even if there's a unity, which is quite interesting, because it's also going to the public spaces, this materiality. You have a very big range of typology, which is quite interesting. And you have the reglementation also of 4.50 meters from the ground, that you have to construct only 4.50 meters. So the houses are really getting underneath the trees and are under the landscape. And also the question of the greenery rooftops, which are very interesting also for the climate. And it works still. They are from the 60s and they still work. And also public small spaces are created in the hameau, and spaces also very natural spaces in the pinade. And we did one transformation, renovation bit of one house in the office. This is the whole domain. You see the density of trees also, but the density of also of buildings, but they are not very visible. They're invisible. The house of the transformation we did, it's here, it's up to here. And we have this situation, and we just try to keep the maximum of the quality which was existing with the patio. We have this situation where we have a terrace house, which goes down, and we have this presence also of a lot of trees. And this there they have some problems. You see it for the neighbors. They are not even now have the vegetation. This has to be changed. And then the typology, the existing typology, which is very, very, very dense, very small, but very efficient. So we have always the minimum of large spaces, and we have very efficient typology here. And our intervention was a small intervention of changing 3-4 elements of the pavement of the soil, but reinterpreting it today. The kitchen was not installed, so we just reinterpreted it with the material which are already existing there. And then just some elements which are outside to extend a small terrace. In fact, the other elements were existing. And so we are not working now with the students in free work. As you are also students, it was interesting for me to make maybe a parallel on this side. And the work with the students is really at the big scale in a way on the side. They are working on the landscape urbanism in one hand, and they are also working on on a development of existing structures they investigate, or new structures with the same reglementation of urbanism which is existing. So this was the opening day there with Patrick Bouchin in France when we were there. And yeah, that's just a small link to them and to your students also. So I finished. Thank you, Tristan.
Thank you, Stephanie. Traduzco, este es el proyecto de renovación de una casa en este gran plan que se llama Domaine Gaou-Benat, es en el sur de Francia, sobre el Mediterráneo, entre Toulon y Saint-Tropez. Y este es un lugar que fue proyectado por dos arquitectos en los años 60 y donde hicieron un plan para construir 750 casas dentro de un entorno natural, pensando que se pueden construir casas, pero a la vez preservar el lugar, y que de hecho puede ser una manera de preservarlo para que en gran parte se mantenga. Entonces pusieron un montón de reglas de cómo construir las casas. Hay enormes sectores verdes protegidos que no se pueden construir. Desde el mar las casas no se ven por la manera en la que están dispuestas, y en estos lugares verdes hay un montón de conexiones peatonales posibles, que son esos senderitos que se veían entre los pinos. Las reglas son que las casas tienen que tener paredes de piedra, losas de hormigón y techos verdes, que si hay árboles no se pueden sacar, sino que se tiene que construir un patio alrededor del árbol. Estaban esos esquemas de los patios. Y lo interesante es que esta regla de un material genera como una imagen unificada, pero a la vez permite que existan ahí múltiples espacialidades y tipologías. La vivienda que ellos renovaron trataron de cambiar la menor cantidad de elementos, y lo interesante del trabajo para ellos fue que les permitió empezar a hacer trabajos con los estudiantes en este lugar de distinto tipo, trabajos con el paisajismo del lugar, y también a estudiar como otras posibilidades estructurales a partir de estas reglas de construcción de este lugar, ¿no? Y terminamos con esta imagen con los estudiantes. Thank you, Stephanie. This was great. We already have questions here from the students.
Thank you for the traduction.
I will let Anita take care of the Q&A now, but yeah. I want to thank you, and it was really amazing, and it's great for me to see, because when you look at projects from Switzerland, from Argentina, our reality is like very different in almost every sense, like geographically, topographically, social, economical, industrial, like any in terms of regulations and climatically. So what happens to us is that it's an architecture that for people who have not worked in Switzerland, like Bruno, but for the rest of us, it's really beautiful and interesting, but it's hard to really get inside which are the real problems of that architecture, or what are the problems that you're thinking of when you're working on that. And I think that the lecture in that sense was very clear about this issue of context, and what's the meaning of context to you, and what's the meaning of landscape, and what are the two worlds that you're trying to bring together of densification and natural land. It was great for me, and I imagine for the students and professors as well, to get this understanding of this culture that is otherwise really attractive, but also really distant from us. So thank you. And well, I will let Anna now take care of the questions.
Okay, thank you for the
yeah.
Bye-bye.
I take this part. Thank you, Stephanie. It was really nice and interesting to hear you. And while the students and the rest of the teachers prepare their questions, I start with one. I enjoyed a lot. I thought it was very strong and contundent, if you say that word. I was amazed to see how, I mean, my interpretation at least, is that you combine like your Dutch OMA backgrounds on densification and program design and research, typology, and a strong statement with the more Swiss context approach and history and patrimony and sensibility and poetic and subtlety that of course you have it. I mean, you have these two words combined. And can you reflect a little bit on that? How is it for you? Because I really see that the two approaches, no?
Yeah. Maybe the method is for us very OMA tended, how could I say, because we are always working in the office also with variants, as we did it also in Rotterdam. We test a lot, we think a lot in a way. It's not the small sketch which is important, but it's more the reflection in a team. And what is the most efficient solution also, which it's more the durable solution also. I think it's the method comes also with the OMA work I did in Rotterdam. I was also the doctoral thesis, PhD was also orientated of the void in urbanism, but the void in a way the contemporary void, and to reverse the approach of urbanism as it also did in some projects, Rem Koolhaas for Melon-Sénart, for example. But this is only competition entries, but it gets to strategy and to brevet. So it was also a brevet. And so I think this is the method is coming in a way or influenced us from this kind of project. And then the context in Switzerland it's quite I always say we're always thinking that the context in Holland it's the other extreme, because it's only nothing, it's like flat, it's very artificial, and Switzerland it's this landscape presence which is very, very strong and very in the history also, which is quite important. So we are working here, so we get influenced also of this approach. And I was also on the EPFL, the studies, I finished my studies also at the EPFL. So yeah. I'm influenced also quite with the project world or with the approach by Switzerland. Maybe it's a mix. Yeah, I didn't see it like this so clearly, but maybe it's possible. Yeah, you have a good analyze.
Yeah, it's really visible. Maybe I take this question, which is very precise, from a student on YouTube, and it says, when you work, sorry, I have to translate in Spanish. I forgot. Yo le pregunté a ella si podía hablar sobre esta como choque de culturas entre lo que parece ser un acercamiento más holandés desde su origen de haber trabajado en OMA, en Rem Koolhaas, que tiene más que ver con la densificación y con el diseño del programa y con la investigación de tipologías y con una fuerte statement por detrás, pero mezclado con una parte más como suiza, que tiene que ver con el contexto y con la historia y el patrimonio y con algo más poético y sensible. Y lo que me dijo, su respuesta tiene que ver con que el método que usan en la oficina viene de su trabajo en OMA, que es de una manera como en equipo, y hizo referencia a algún proyecto de Koolhaas como Melun Senart, y que al mismo tiempo estudió e hizo su tesis en Suiza en la EPLF. Thank you. Y que tiene como todo ese contexto de donde ella estudió, y que por otro lado el contexto en Holanda es muy chato y artificial porque es el paisaje que hay en Holanda, pero que en Suiza, entre las montañas y la vegetación, que es muy fuerte y es siempre presente, al mismo tiempo mezclado con el fuerte patrimonio histórico que tiene. Entonces, bueno, capaz no lo tenía muy en cuenta, pero que sí, que tiene que ver con eso su manera de trabajar. Okay, now I read the question for everybody. When you work on a renovation project on a historical building, is there any construction or technological problem in terms of isolation due to climate conditions? For climate conditions, can you preserve the old facade exactly as it is?
All this is depending on, one hand on the degree of the protection, if it's really a protected building. If it's really a protected building, we have a much more liberty for intervening and in another way. So all the energy laws we can discuss it. But if it's not so protected, it's more difficult to have exception rules. But still, I mean, we are always insisting in these cases for keeping the outside facade mineral, because if you put on the insulation outside, it's completely destroyed the building. So we always try in a global approach to put more insulation, but only inside, which is less good than outside. But we arrived in the buildings we arrived, and they are not protected. The Villa Closy is not protected. We can arrive. We have just to have an intelligent engineer for physics in this case, but we can handle it. Yeah.
When you say mineral, it's about the
existing facade. So, often we leave it. We leave the composition. Sometimes we have to do the how do you say it? Crépissage. I mean, it's the mineral. It's only the puts. I don't know the English word. But I mean, the composition outside we leave. Sometimes we have to do the color or the last element, but we try often to leave it as it is.
La pregunta tenía que ver con en los proyectos de renovación, si la insulación, si la aislación cómo hace para preservar la fachada exactamente como está, y dónde pone la isolation, ¿cómo se dice? La aislación. Y que ella contestó que tiene que ver con los niveles de protección que tenga el edificio a restaurar, y que en este caso pudieron ponerlo simplemente desde el interior, aunque sea menos eficiente, pero lograron de esa manera dejar la fachada sin ponerle ningún producto por afuera. There is another one, but I think it's already implied. Is there any regulation, law on preserving historical buildings? I think you just answered that. No?
We have different degrees of buildings, yeah.
Same as here. La leo en español y la traduzco. I read it in Spanish and translate. Su trabajo es muy variado en todo sentido. ¿Cómo inciden los concursos públicos en la obtención de trabajos? ¿Nos puede contar qué influencia tiene para estudios de arquitectura como el suyo? So, as your work is very different, how does the public competition modify, how you say, how does the public competition
Influence.
Influence. Thank you very much.
Influence
On
our
getting
work.
the jobs, on getting private jobs, or getting jobs.
Influence. No, I mean, the competition for us, it has the objective to get the work, but we work always with the context and with the situation and what we think it's the best solution for this site. Afterwards, we can win or we can get the second prize, and then we don't have the mandate, the project. It influenced us. Well, it influences that you reflect much more, I think, because the concurrence is quite high. But sometimes you have I mean, for you, maybe it's not so high, but for us, sometimes you have 60 people or you have 20 people working on the competition here, offices. That depends the competition, but you have a much more work on a first reflection on the project, I think, yes. Because if you work for a client, the reflection will be in the first phase also quite strong, but maybe you're not thinking of the others yet, because in a competition there are 50 others also working on the same project, and we will think of what will be the solution, the most interesting, I don't know. But we have a lot of competition projects. The private projects are coming now a little bit, but during our last 20 years, we had some small interior project, but no buildings, and only some villas or transformation. The other one was always public competition projects. So we're in this reflection. It's difficult.
Yeah. Following this, then how many competitions would you do to win one?
That's not mathematically. If it was very nice, but it's not.
Because there is always this saying that it says 1 in 10.
No. It's we had periods where we had a lot of second prizes, and so. And then we won one competition last year. This year now we had an information that we go further on, that we have to meet the client, that we win the competition in a way. I don't know. It's not. I think it's not mathematical. It's not. It's calculable. You can't. Afterwards, you can say, well, we are doing maybe 5 a year. It's already a lot for us. Yeah, 5 competitions.
Okay, I translate this.
Yeah.
Lo que estaba diciendo es que muchos de sus trabajos que mostró vienen de concursos, y que los concursos suelen ser con mucha gente, entre 60 y 40, y que ahora, recién ahora y cada vez más, están teniendo encargos privados, y que anteriormente eran como pequeñas obras, pero que ahora empieza a pasar más. Capaz, antes de seguir leyendo las preguntas, hay preguntas de alguien en el Zoom. Abro el micrófono, que me estoy olvidando, si no.
Yo sé que hacen muchos concursos, y una de las preguntas, y que creo que ayuda para entender digamos, nuestra coyuntura también, es cuántos de los concursos que ganaron los pudieron realizar, porque el sistema de concursos allá en Suiza es muy potente en la forma en que da trabajo a, digamos, muchos estudios, y en la que pueden emerger estudios de mucha calidad, como el de Stephanie. Entonces le quería hacer esa pregunta. cuántos de los que ganaron los construyeron, porque también eso es lo que queda como patrimonio para, digamos, digamos, el Estado que produce un concurso.
Stephanie, did you get it? Oh, Bruno, you say it in French.
I didn't get it.
Parfait.
I
Non,
like to,
Steph,
Yeah.
non,
Non.
de tous les concours que vous avez gagnés, quelle quantité vous avez construit finalement?
Combien alors, nous, on a, il y a aussi des cas, there's a situation also that you win a competition, but you don't get the project that exists even in Switzerland. So we had this situation, I think, 3 times that we won a competition, and then we didn't have the project. Yeah. Afterwards, how many? I don't know how many competition we won, but a lot. Yeah, a lot for the realization. Je sais pas. Combien on a gagné, tu veux dire?
Okay.
Je sais pas, j'ai
Ouais.
pas compris en fait.
Non, mais surtout oui, de que vous avez gagné, quels sont les que vous avez construits. Mais c'est bon.
Ouais, beaucoup. The percentage,
Beaucoup.
the percentage is very high in Switzerland of the what you win and then what you construct. This is very controlled in a way also. Afterwards, sometimes it's not working out, and well, that's like this. But there's a lot higher. It's a very small presentation that you don't construct.
En resumen, la respuesta a la pregunta de Bruno es que hay solamente un muy pequeño porcentaje de concursos que ganás y no construís. Básicamente, si ganás el concurso, se construye. Y para los estudiantes que posiblemente no sepan eso, acá en Argentina es difícil que eso suceda todo el tiempo.
C'est difficile. Il y a pas beaucoup de concours. There are not a lot of competitions in Argentina.
Maybe not so many, but
Yeah.
the problem is that you might win and then not get the commission to build it, or maybe you get the commission to build it and then it's not built. It doesn't get to build.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's like what. Sigo, si nos quedan unos minutos más, sigo con una pregunta más. You have like 5 more minutes. I read the last question, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
In some of the exposed examples, there were relationships with graphic works of art. How the connection is made between art as a source of inspiration for architecture? Can you?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's like references for reflecting the work. For example, the work of the reference I showed in artwork, but then they can also be other references, like other buildings could be also references. We're working with the references, yeah, but they are not every time showed, but we with the context and some existing buildings also, or historical buildings could be a reference. So depending, that's a whole process of the work. And so we are not saying it's only artwork or it's only buildings, but the artwork is a lot of, it's very strong is essence of reflection, we think, the artwork. So it's also a very strong for us, a very strong reference, yeah.
La pregunta tenía que ver con cómo trabaja la obra de arte como una fuente de inspiración para ellos, para la arquitectura. Y su respuesta fue que tanto el arte, que realmente es una gran fuente de inspiración, pero como otros edificios pueden ser como una especie de puntapié para pensar y para investigar sobre el trabajo que están haciendo. ¿Alguien más quiere hacer una pregunta? Porque no tenemos más, los estudiantes, no hay más preguntas en YouTube, y siendo ya casi las 11, I think, Stephanie, that you gave us a lot. It was really interesting, your lecture, and if there are no any questions, I think it's time that we free you.
Okay.
Merci beaucoup, Stéphanie. Excellent.
Thank you to you, and maybe we can, if it's possible, to organize something with the exchange. Would be nice.
Would be great. Yeah.
Would be nice.
Ça serait très bien.
We have to work on it.
Let's work on that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Stephanie, thank you very much. Hope to see you and meet you in person.
Yeah, you too, and have a nice day. I mean, you start